This is fun. Man, great job, choir. That was awesome. I enjoyed that. Hope you all did too. Yeah, go ahead, give a round of applause. It's good to celebrate the gifts that God gives us and how we get to use them to glorify Him and to edify each other. I got to tell you guys, I have been dizzy since last Sunday. I don't know. It's the first time in my life this has ever happened. But if I fall over or pass out, that's why. Someone grab some smelling salts and prop me back up, and I'll finish. But I'm probably going to stay seated for most of this, because when you've been on a roller coaster for a week, your equilibrium's a little off. So that's what I got. A little infirmity going into the morning. But let me. I want to set the scene for you. So picture Turbotville Elementary. Milk is in plastic bags, and if you stab it a little too hard, it all comes out the bottom. The gym has navy blue carpet everywhere, including 12 feet up the walls. Mr. Bowman is my third grade teacher, and he is the coolest teacher that there is. I don't know if he was a good teacher, but I made it to fourth grade, so he was good enough. But if you completed all of your book it, he would take you to Pizza Hut in his Jeep. Because you could do that back then. And somehow, I got the brilliant idea to challenge him in a game of chess. Now, it was high stakes chess, because if I beat him, the entire class would have no homework for one night. And if I lost, I had to spend an entire day not speaking. So, the fateful day comes, we sit down, we're in the middle of the room at a desk, everybody's gathered around us, and if I win, this is street cred for all of elementary school. We're neck and neck. I actually was the first to get him in check, but I slowly watched my strategic edge slip away, and checkmate came, and it wasn't to my favor. So, the very next day, I spent the entire day not speaking. I couldn't speak in class. I couldn't talk at lunch. I was not even allowed to yell at recess. Now, I never got so many notes passed to me in my life as I did that day, which was fun. Remember, this is pre-texting. But that was my first day of total silence in my life. Now, I won't say that I had some profound experience, spiritual or otherwise, that day, but it is the first day that I can remember being silent for an entire day, which was almost a miracle in and of itself if you'd have known little Caleb. But, we're focusing today on the discipline of silence. And I had kind of a fun conversation with Pastor Mike leading up to this, and we were talking about, and you've heard him say, there's two sides of these disciplines. There's the discipline of abstinence, which is silence, so taking something away, you're taking the noise away. And then there's a discipline of engagement, which is you're adding something in. And there's this neat two-side of a coin for silence, where silence is one side, study is the other. Because if you don't study, you don't have as much to work with or think through or allow God to use in those moments of silence when you're reflecting and thinking. But if all you do is study and you're never silent, you don't have time to process what you're learning. So they're two sides of one coin, which is kind of fun. And so today we're focusing on the discipline of silence. What that means for us as we seek to engage in greater and further depth with God. And I can say, from my own experience, over the last 2 or 3 years, most of you know I'm a car guy, and along with that, I also enjoy a really good sound system. So I have an Alpine Type R that has traveled with me. For those of you who don't speak subwoofer, that's a big, hard-hitting subwoofer that has traveled with me from vehicle to vehicle. It's not in my current one, regretfully. We may remedy that. But I like sound. I like music. I like it pumping. But over the last couple of years, I have found myself increasingly driving in silence. And I think a lot of you who are shaking your head, you know what I'm talking about. It's almost like, okay, you get on the road, you turn on the music, and it just doesn't feel right. Like it's almost too much. And you turn it off, and you go, oh, there it is. That's what my head needs. That's what my heart needs, right? So we know, kind of without even talking about it, there's something powerful in silence. And so what we're looking at today is the discipline of silence is a pathway to experience God. It's a pathway to experience God. Now, just to give you some perspective of where we are in culture, like we exist in a dopamine-rich, micro-attention, sensory stimuli-filled world and culture. Like technology, the ability to have something in front of you or noise in your ears has never been greater than it is in this moment in human history. Like you think about it, 100 years ago, actually we're in 2020 now, 150 years ago, like there wasn't a speaker that produced sound, right? It was instruments. There weren't screens that put something in front of you visually. We live in a world with a lot of noise. Now, this has always been a battle and a challenge for people throughout human history. That's why there's so much in Scripture that, like Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God, right? He has been sharing this message with us, this need for silence, this need for slowing down, since the beginning. But the world that we presently live in is drastically different than it has ever been. I mean, we experience such an overload. We live in a consumer society, and guess what? They make money off of your attention. So they're pumping out very flashy, attention-grabbing, dopamine-releasing advertisements, products, TV shows, channels, shorts to try and grab your attention, and it fills us with noise. Now, when we try to come out of this and enter into silence, it kind of produces one of two things, right? Like, for those of you who have walked this path alongside of me at times, you're like, okay, I'm doing it now. I'm going to have silence. And you'll sit there and 2 minutes go by and it is like your skin is crawling and it feels so uncomfortable. You're like, okay, no, that doesn't work, right? And yet you can have that awesome mom who can sit there in the cacophony of noise, there's a vocab word for you, that all of these blessed little children make, and her soul can be as quiet and calm as if they just got out of a 1-hour Swedish massage. So like, what? How can they be so at peace with so much noise, and yet when I go into silence, I'm so uncomfortable? It's kind of a conundrum, isn't it? Well, silence is it's actually not about noise. It's about the condition of the soul, right? It's about the condition of the soul. It's where your spirit is. Let me really quickly just give you a breakdown, right? So in Scripture, we have a few elements of who we are identified. Mind, heart, spirit, body, right? God talks about that pretty often. So in the way that I look at things theologically, those four make up your soul. Like your soul is the combination of all those things. It's like your being, who you are as a person. So when we're talking about the condition of the soul, all of those things get affected or have an effect. And we'll talk about that more in just a moment. But I want you to see that silence is a way of fasting the constant stimuli of the 21st century world that we live in. A very effective way of fasting this. And so it's almost like an antidote to the culture that we're in. I mean, you could call, I don't know if I want to go as far as say, like, there is a poison in the noise that's put out right now. And silence is the antidote. And it's really neat. Like, science has taught us so much about how God created us, right? And what he's been instructing us for years and years and years. And so I'm going to highlight quickly. I'm an over-preparer, so I could talk for a really long time about the scientific side of things. I really want to just equip you this morning to go further in your own study on this side of silence, right? Which is like the physiological side. So we're looking at like how does the body respond to silence? And there's a theory called the polyvagal theory. And what it's doing is it's assessing how does your body respond to things, the autonomic nervous system, like what automatically happens in my body based on what's going on around me. And specifically, it's looking at the ventral vagal complex, which is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is your second largest nervous system in the body, next to your skin. And it literally is a highway of information that travels from the brain, specifically the emotion center of the brain, down through the body, and it ties directly into your organs, your heart, your stomach, your digestive tract. And depending, and here's what I really just want you to get from this, depending on what's happening in front of you, it will affect how your brain interprets things, and then you'll get a feeling about something. And it can work the opposite way. This is what I mean. How many of you have ever had a gut feeling that something's off? Raise the hands, right? There's no evidence, there's no facts that I can read out, but something's not right. That gut feeling is your body interpreting that something's off and trying to give you a sign by triggering your stomach to feel upset. That's the vagus nerve system working, okay? And yet it also works the other direction, which is kind of fun. But here's okay. I'm getting too far off track. Let's focus here. What I want you to get though is that silence literally can affect how our brains respond and change the entire state of our body, okay? And so there was a meta-study done by a group of folks, and this is referenced on the backside of your handouts. You can go to this later. Don't go there right now. But what they did was they identified that there were a number of different types of silence and how they would define them and what they look like. And all I want you to focus on this morning is there is a difference between outer and inner silence, right? Where outer silence is like all the noise in the environment is quieted and down. Inner silence is my spirit or my soul or my mind or my heart or my body quiet. That's the mom that can sit there in all that noise and be totally calm, when normally it would trigger us to be amped up, ready to go, right? So what I want you to know is there's a significant, and there's different types of silence. So look at these later. It'll be fun for you, I think. But then there are some significant physiological advantages of sitting in external silence. And they would include, and I have these on the back all spelled out, but I'm just going to go through them real quick for you guys. Listen to this list. Keep your eyes up here. Stress reduction, improved focus and concentration, enhanced creativity, better emotional regulation, increased self-awareness, lower blood pressure, improved sleep quality, enhanced immune function, and reduced pain perception. If you could put all of that into a pill, it would outsell all of Advil, Tylenol, and the antidepressants that are out there. You get it all by being in a silent environment. How wild is that? But the silent environment doesn't necessarily mean that you have inner silence. So it's two things that have to work together. So what we see is that the discipline of silence, it's like a resetting for your soul. So we're going to spend the next 20 minutes sitting quietly. No, I'm kidding. But so it's like a resetting for the soul. When all these things happen, it kind of resets you, it recalibrates you. And we know from a spiritual perspective that it kind of does some things at a much deeper level than just affecting your body. And you can begin to see why God would have encouraged us to pursue silence regularly. I mean, we look at the biblical characters, and there's scripture that talks about silence all over the place, and there's biblical characters who have experienced silence, prolonged periods of silence. And so we look at people like Moses, who would have spent 40 days silent up on Mount Sinai with God before God delivered the law to him. Characters like Zechariah, who prior to the birth of John the Baptist would have been silent for almost 9 months or longer, actually. That's kind of wild. And then Jesus, who would have spent 40 days in the wilderness, fasting and silent. Now, again, I don't think any one of these characters had total elimination of all noise from outside of them, right? But they got away from the normal and into a different environment, and I think each one of them quieted their inner noise. And then we get to who's going to be our main character. So the discipline of silence prepares you to encounter God. And we're going to see this. Elijah's our character. 1 Kings 19 is where we're going to camp out. If you want to get ahead, I think we're starting in verse 8, 9. We'll start in verse 9 if you want to get your Bibles there. Oh, I forgot my Bible. It's okay. I have it written down, but I was going to bring my Bible. And the other sheet. It's okay. We're going to make it through. So Elijah, here's the context. Elijah is a prophet of God. He is a messenger and a mouthpiece in a time where it's very unpopular to be a messenger of God. Ahab is king. Jezebel is queen. They're about as bad as you can get for debauchery and just sin. They're worshiping Baal. They're doing terrible things. They've led Israel into a sunken state, spiritually depraved. And Elijah has been the one that's had to come to Ahab every single time and warn him of God's wrath. He doesn't like his job. It's not fun. He's unpopular. Nobody likes him, but he's faithful to God, right? And so he walks through this ministry time, and he's just commanded 3 years of drought. So the whole nation's going to suffer, not because he said it, but because God said it, but he's, the mouthpiece, so he gets the blame. Mount Carmel happens, the showdown with the 450 prophets of Baal. God proves definitively by raining fire down on a soaked altar and consuming everything that he is God. They commence, Ahab's there, this bad king. Ahab's there, he witnesses all of this. They lead the people, and all these people are there, and they're like, oh my goodness, God is God. We're going to serve him now. They execute all the prophets of Baal. And then Elijah's thinking, oh, this is amazing. Like, God is finally turning everything around. They get back to the city. I can just picture it. Ahab walks in. Jezebel's like, hey, how'd your day go? He's like, you're never going to believe this. God did X, Y, and Z. And she's like, nope, that's not what we're doing. Nope. Ahab, you sit right down. Here's how we're going to handle this. Jezebel wears the pants in this rulership. And she basically says, we're not following God. And we're going to now kill Elijah. Finally, his time has come. He has to die because we're not putting up with this. It's threatening our power and our hold over the people, right? That's really what this was about. And so Elijah now feels completely defeated, and he's running for his life. He drops off his servant at one place because he's like, well, you might as well not get killed with me. And he heads out into the desert. And actually, the Hebrew word is wilderness. The same word that's used to describe the wilderness that Jesus went into, the same word that's used to describe the wilderness that the Israelites journeyed through. And he's going to spend 40 days journeying. And it's kind of neat. So he goes out, and he's ready to die. He's decided it's time. He lays down under a tree, and he asks, just let me die, God. And an angel comes to him. Says, hey, I made you some food. Get up, eat. So Elijah gets up and he eats. And he lays down and he sleeps again. The angel's like, Elijah, come on, man. Eat. Gets him up, feeds him another meal. And then he sets him on a journey. Hey, God wants to talk with you. It's time to go. Go to Mount Horeb. Fun little fact, guys. Remember, all these things are tied together. If you're depressed, a good meal and a good sleep are two of the best things that you can do to start changing what's going on. A healthy meal, right? You don't need all those sugars, trust me. There's a whole glycemic impact that happens that you don't want. But God ministers to Elijah in his depressed state, calls him to a journey of 40 days, and as far as we know, there's no one else around. So you can imagine that he's walking for 40 days in silence. And it's fun too, because so he's going to Mount Horeb. Mount Horeb is Mount Sinai. That's where God delivered the law. That's where he met Moses. Yet the word chosen by this author is Horeb, which means the desolation or ruin or a ruined place. He's trying to communicate how destroyed Elijah feels. So this is the picture. You've got a very defeated feeling Elijah, depressed. God's ministering, he's calling him, he's kind of leading him one step at a time, and he's journeying. And so he's heading to Mount Sinai or Mount Horeb, and this is one of the experiences that the people had with God on this mountain. Hebrews 12 sums it up pretty well in 18, but this is what it would have been like for them. It was a mountain that they couldn't even get close to. It was enveloped in fire and darkness and gloom and storm. There was so much noise. The only thing they could compare it to was as though every trumpet that they had ever heard was blasting at the same time. If an animal or a person would have gotten close to the mountain where God was with Moses, they had to be killed because they were not righteous enough to approach. And everyone, including Moses, was trembling with fear at this time. That's what it's like to stand before God. And so Elijah's heading to an experience like this. And we call it, so it's a theophany. And that's your theology word for the day, which is really just a physical manifestation of God in our world. So a theophany. And the irony is that you backtrack a couple of chapters, Elijah standing before Ahab claims to be a man who has stood before God and so has authority to speak what he speaks. What you're going to see is Elijah stand before God, and I think it's very different from what he had thought it would be. So we're going to pick it up in 1 Kings 19. I'm reading, this is the ESV, so we're starting in verse 9. Might sound a little different than yours, but this is how it reads. We're going to go to verse 14. There he came to a cave and lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. And he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah says, "I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant. They've thrown down your altars, and they've killed your prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left. And they seek my life to take it away." And he, being God, said, "Go out. Stand on the mount before the Lord." And behold, here we go. The Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountain and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out, and he stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he says, again, parroting his own feelings and experience, "I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant. They've thrown down your altars. They've killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even I only, am left. They seek my life to take it away." I think when you look at it, like, you get a little bit of maybe an entitled attitude coming out of Elijah, right? But definitely a sunken or a broken attitude for sure. And you really can't blame him. Like, Hello, everybody. Pretty much every single one of us at some point will feel this low, will feel depressed, will feel, many of us, like life isn't worth it anymore and wanting to die. If you've felt that, you're not alone, and there's nothing wrong with you. That is the effect of the human condition. But, but, there is so much worth living for, and there is purpose for your life, and God is going to answer that and show that to Elijah in this exchange. This is fun. And so like you can't really, he seems a little irreverent as he comes to God, right? And he repeats the same thing, like, God, this is what's going on. It's so terrible. How could you let it come to this? Well, you can't exactly blame him. But what's happening, I think, is that this season of intensity that Elijah has been through, right? Remember we talked about growth a couple weeks ago, and it kind of looks like this. Like your journey with God is like a roller coaster that tucks and weaves, and you get spiritual highs, and then you get valleys that you drop into. And I think Elijah literally just went from the highest high that he could have at Mount Carmel with the victory down to the lowest defeat of the whole nation is now standing opposed to God again, despite how God revealed himself there. And so you can't really blame him that he feels defeated and sunk and tired. But God is so compassionate in this response and how he handles Elijah in this interchange, right? And it's funny because if you looked close, Elijah actually disobeyed right in this moment. Because God said, come out on the mountain. But Elijah did not come out until all of the terrifying things were over. And then he wraps his cloak around him and steps out when it gets all quiet. I think that God wanted him to come out and stand in the midst of the wind and see that God didn't crush him, and stand on the earthquake and realize that God didn't shake him off the mountain face, and stand in the midst of the inferno and realize that God did not burn him up. I think that's what God wanted him to experience, but he hid in the cave until it was all over, and then he came out. But it's the whisper, and it reminds me of how God handled Adam after the fall. Do you guys remember? God came into the garden. They're hiding. He didn't call him out and say, Adam, you fool. How could you have? He comes in and he says, Adam, where you at? What's going on, man? Why are you hiding? What's up? God knew. It's the same thing with Elijah. God knew the whole time. He didn't ask Elijah what was going on and have Elijah repeat himself twice for God's sake. He knew. This was for Elijah's sake. Because I think there's a process as you walk through silence where you need to get all of your thoughts and your burdens and your cares and your heartaches laid out before God. You've got to empty yourself out so there's not so much noise in here so you can then hear a whisper. Do you see that that's what's going on here? I think it was for Elijah's sake that he had him repeat himself twice. He wanted Elijah to see what was going on in his own life. Then God was ready to whisper what comes next. And here's how God answers. Verse 15. And the Lord said to him, go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael to be king over Syria, and Jehu the son of Nimshi you shall anoint to be king over Israel, and Elijah the son of Shaphat of Abel Meholah you shall anoint to be prophet in your place. And the one who escapes the sword of Hazael shall Jehu put to death. The one who escapes the sword of Jehu shall Elisha put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. First, he speaks very concrete actions to Elijah. Hey, you feel like there's nothing worth living for. I understand that. Let me give you a couple of things to do and start on it immediately. Right? We often need this when we're feeling depressed or sunk. We just need clear actions. What's the next thing to do? He gives that to Elijah. He gives him purpose for future of ministry and vision. Hey, there's somebody, Elijah is going to come and assist you. He's going to pick up the mantle. You're not going to carry this forever on your own, right? And he speaks to the concerns of like, the whole nation's against you. No one wants to follow you. God's prophesying the elimination of all the people who stood against him in this season of ministry, which is not fun things to think about as modern day Christians, right? Like the death and the execution of people. But God's showing, like, I have a plan here. And Elijah, you forget, you say you're the only one left. There's 7,000 others. And the irony is that only a few years ago, Elijah was the one that helped to hide all those people, so they didn't die. He forgot. He forgot. And so moving into silence prepares you to hear clearly from God. But, just like the wind and the earthquake and the fire, you have got to battle through the noise and the struggle to get to the silent place. You've got to plan to battle through the noise and the chaos before you can find the silence needed to hear from God. The goal of silence is not that the world around you is quiet, although that does help. There's great advantage to it. But rather that your soul can be quiet enough to hear his whisper. And this is a skill that you learn. You don't just decide one day to do it and it's great and amazing and some profound experience. This is a skill that you develop, that is trained, that you practice, that you tweak, that you fail at, that you try again, that you change what you do in order to enter into those moments of silence. Right? I've found that music helps me enter silence. Man, Hans Zimmer, Last of the Mohican soundtrack, Braveheart, Lord of the Rings. I've got a Pandora station curated to help lead me to silence, to quieting my soul, right? And you can too. It's not cheating. That's helping and assisting. I know how I have to enter silence. And a lot of times it takes time to clear out your mind to get there. Like the most profound experiences I have with silence happen twice a year. Planting and combining season, because I will spend days on end in a cab or on a seat with nothing else around me, and I will think all my thoughts, and I will worry all my worries, and eventually I'll come to a place where there's nothing left in my brain, and then finally God can speak to me. And I have some really deep and profound moments with God on usually about day 3 and 4 and 5. Emptying myself out. And so I want you to practice this. And Pastor Mike gave us a workout plan sheet. And that's what I was going to bring. I was going to show you. So I did it the last week for worship. It was awesome. You should do it this week for silence. 10 minutes a day. Carve it out. Create it somewhere. Leave your phone in another room. Get outside on a park bench. Put some headphones in. Listen to some music if you need. Whatever's going to help you to sit in that silence. And if you can do it consistently, I'll bet you by about day 3 or 4, you're going to start experiencing something different and new.